Hi again. Welcome back to Speaking Truth to Goodness, the podcast where we seek joy and purpose on a burning planet. Our conversations are informed by art, activism, and a recognition of humans' deep need for connection and affirmation. The current series we are in with guest host Michaela McCormick begins in episode 1. In this episode, we dive deeply into the crucial theme of leadership as it relates to bridging racial and generational divides. We unpack the necessity of listening to and learning from Indigenous perspectives and other marginalized voices, challenging the dominance of European-led models in activism. We navigate the complexities of trauma as they butt up against the economic and ecological realities of would-be leaders, additionally thwarting the rise of BIPOC leaders, even when we work hard to support them. Michaela shares her own efforts in Portland's Poor People's Campaign and her emotional struggles to contextualize the problems between the races when her own best efforts still don't seem to achieve the hoped-for goal of unity. If these stories and ideas connect for you, consider reaching out. Feel free to leave comments on Spotify or find us on Instagram. And with that, we'll jump into the conversation.
So I find myself in the recent years, because I've spent most of my life, at least vocationally, trying to organize change in groups, in institutions, and something you said a little earlier, Jerry, made me think of this. I think I'm reluctantly admitting these days that I think we're in a time now where a traditional organizing model, I'm thinking of a political organizing, community organizing, the kind of thing that I've been pursuing for decades, is not effective now. At least on our side of the change efforts, liberation. And you were pointing, Jerry, to, and you've been saying this in different words too as well, Patty, that the key at this time is figuring out how to treat each other person to person, how to be compassionate, how to be kind. And with all of those deficits that you listed a couple of minutes ago, Jerry, that a lot of people can't get housing, a lot of people don't have health care. One you didn't mention, but we need to, is the climate is collapsing. All of that stuff, these younger people are facing, and it's making it very difficult to figure out how to proceed, how to save the society. But no matter what happens, and maybe particularly because we're faced with all these problems, there are more and more opportunities to treat each other well, to choose to be kind and compassionate, to take care of each other. And maybe it's out of that, rather than some grand organizing effort or strategy, where we're going to learn what really matters in terms of how do we treat each other. And out of that, how do we then organize things on the basis of that story rather than the capitalist, white supremacist, greedy one?
Well, two things occur to me. One is, look at the three of us. We've known each other for less than a year, and we are completely committed to each other, love each other, would have your back, have your front, have your whatever is in danger. So we haven't been organized in the last year. We've been transformed. So that's the difference. You're looking for words for it. transactional organizing, trying to get people to do something, and what Gandhi chose, transformational organizing, which accomplishes a goal but also accomplishes personal transformation, satyagraha. So I just feel like what we have been able to accomplish, and a few other of us who've just come through this art affinity group and somehow hooked you in, is remarkable. I mean, I have people I completely trust, and that's not normal when you're just in an aggregate. So we're beyond the aggregate, and now we're trying to build those connections. We don't do it intentionally, it happens. We don't even necessarily notice what it is or understand how important it is.
But don't you think, like, how wonderful it is that we have, the three of us, have these people from the local climate movement that we've connected with, and we care about each other. We sometimes share meals, we do plays, we do things together, and that's great. But it's kind of pointless if it's not going beyond us.
Right.
And that's clearly where we need to go next. But I just want to say how much I appreciate watching you, Jerry, because I think you embody that, where that kind of compassion and awareness and seeing people around you, you do that. And you live in this community where there's a lot of people around. You always have stories about a staff member here that you've invested your heart, your belongings, and you pour that out of yourself onto those around you. But isn't that what we're looking for, right? Because we can only hope that we can build into it something that will start cascading.
We have to be able to survive. My friend Terry had this poster, you must change to survive, but you must survive to change, right? And it's like, we need each other so much. And we do, we know each other, and yet I don't think we embrace what we've been talking about today fully. Mm-hmm. So it's latent. So somehow we need to infect the rest of the group. We're good germs, we're good COVID. We're good COVID. No, really, we're good. Mm-hmm. And we can do it. So it's like, we are all participants in this process with lots of other people, and the more that we're conscious of the importance of embodying the qualities of the world we actually want in the present. I'm going all crazy here. So Paul Tillich, this sort of crazy theologian who founded a socialist party in Germany in the 30s, I read a sermon of his for obscure reasons called The Right to Hope. And he says, if you are living what you are hoping for, it's present now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So it's hard to hold on to that when things aren't going well in the world around us. Mm-hmm. But in a sense, we are seeds. In a sense, we are. And we have to see our role in that. And I do almost everything intuitively, so I can't, I have no idea what my practice looks like. But I do know, and again, we go back to the title of the podcast, naming goodness when you see it, telling people that they're good, telling Patty what an amazing mother she is. Those are important things, because you need to hear that and know that, which you kind of do, but because what you're dealing with is so complex, you can never feel like you have both feet on the ground at the same time. But you do, and you do it amazingly. So, I don't know. I feel hopeful. We came into this conversation. We was Jewish vermished. I mean, we were both kind of rattled for different reasons. But as soon as we sit down together, that's all gone. Mm-hmm. That's all gone. So.
Well, you asked the question, Jerry, about how we might bring this into Extinction Rebellion. The regenerative culture group, which I'm part of, it has not gone into this nearly as explicitly as we are now. There's a tendency among those of us in that working group to go in that direction, but we're still caught up with getting things done,
Yep.
making action happen, and I think this. I'm sort of putting this on the other people in that working group as well as myself. But when I started learning to be a political organizer in the early 70s, the emphasis was even though I was careful to ally myself and work with other organizers who I saw as caring people fundamentally, when we got down to making decisions and making action happen, the emphasis was on what I would say was a self-criticism model.
Oh.
In other words, what are we doing wrong and how do we improve it?
Yeah.
There
Interesting.
wasn't a lot of time spent on validating each other for what we're already doing, the kind of good people we already are, even though we're all trying to do that. But the emphasis on criticism, self-criticism, I think the effect it had on me and others over the decades, all the political work that I've been involved in, was to keep me on an agenda of trying to be a quote-unquote good organizer, a quote-unquote good person. And I don't think that's what you're saying, Jerry. You're saying that we just need to respond to the moment with the goodness that's already in us. Yes?
Yeah. But it's interesting because as you talk, I see even more clearly the different impulses that drive the change process. One is in the external world trying to create necessary changes that are very important. We have to make those need to happen. They're not. But at the same time, I see some of my comrades looking kind of tired, looking kind of weary, and we can talk about you have to take care of yourself, but nobody believes it.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we talk, I get hopeful. I can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the capacity to survive intact as human beings together is real. It exists.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of it, pieces of it are there. We just need to create a greater arena in which that's dominant. Mm-hmm. Not even dominant's a bad word. Take that word out. Present. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, but see, we're not all good. We're not all pretty. We're nasty. But it's because we've seen some shit and it breaks our brain, and then we behave from our trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And we're a little bit impervious to all the goodness, kindness, compassion coming our way if we're already that busted up. And so this is things I don't actually know enough about, to be totally honest. But we do need a lot more trauma-informed ways of communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. Because a traumatized person won't necessarily see your compassion as compassion. Yeah. They're not bad. They just got broken.
Yeah, I think your experience of being broken, right?
I've known a lot of broken people.
Exactly. Well, yes.
We all have, honestly.
And been broken a bit yourself along the way.
It's true.
And work on healing it.
Mm-hmm.
But that gives you a certain perspective that's necessary. I don't come out of that perspective because I haven't had that direct experience in the same way.
Well, but think about it. What would we be like if we didn't have any trauma? If everything was hunky-dory. I don't actually know the origin of that phrase.
Yeah.
Should watch that. But, if we went through a life that was just silver-spooned, easy, everything given up to us, and then life throws you a curveball, you struggle with that. So like to not have adversity is also a problem. So there's just, we need just enough adversity, but not too much. It's just like, obviously we don't want to be getting all kinds of germs in our body, but at the same time, if we lived in a too sterile environment, we also would not be healthy.
Yeah, nor wise.
Right. So we need a little bit of dirt. We need to experience a little bit of shit. So I don't think we can make a world where that's perfect and that people don't experience hard things. So that will always be a part of it. But our best bet, I think, at making something good, better, perfect for us is that we can be better at accepting the hard things that do come our way, and to generate an understanding among us that is normal and that it's a part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm. About the image, the notion of a lotus flower growing in a pond? The roots of that flower are in the mud, and it would not flower without the mud.
Yeah.
So, our attempts at liberation are a trial and error experience.
That's all it can ever be.
That's all it can ever be. And that's a lot of where the magic comes from. Because if we're sufficiently plugged in to our intuition, as you seem to be, Jerry, we can usually discern where are the best places to invest our kindness, our urge to connect, our compassion, our love, and cultivate those relationships, as opposed to again, referring back to the organizing model that I was originally trained in, it was more mechanical. It was more about numbers and
transactional.
Yeah. And we still need some of that because we have to build mass movements in order to create the society we want. But as I was saying earlier, more than ever, we need to follow our hearts, our intuitions, our urges toward kindness.
And I think climate activists have to be hopeful, or they'd just be paralyzed, right? So there's that spark that gets fed by love and creativity. And that thing, it's probably somewhere in what you read, it's like, we have to have the joy of our convictions. Courage of convictions is important, but kind of sometimes a little grim. Joy of our conviction means this is how I choose to live, and it gives me joy. So that in a sense, we're embodying the world. Oh, Paul Tillich says we can be hopeful because we're living what we want in the future now. So yeah, I think there's an arena bridging generations, how we bridge into environmental justice environments, people of color and more at-risk people. That's going to be harder. That's going to be harder to figure out. We'll need to find allies. Never make it without allies.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to the trauma-informed piece, too, because everybody's got trauma from life and all that comes our way during it. But, if you look at communities of color and indigenous folks, wow, have they suffered some traumas at an entire community level that, we may not be the right people to try to heal those, but if we can hold space, and it's our job to acknowledge and that deeper trauma.
I've only written about racism once. I don't know, have I shared what I've written about racism with either of you? I only did it once because I don't think words are the way to sort of make change. But one of the things there is this simple fact. is I really deeply care about racism. I want it to change. I'm a good person. Oh, maybe 15 minutes a day if you average it out. If you're a person of color, it's every day. Racism, for me to deal with racism, is optional. For them, it's not. And that's the privilege of being able to walk away, whether you do or not, whether you want to or not. Come on, that's huge.
Yeah, I don't want them to be alone in that anymore. I want them to know that they've got white people on their side.
Complicated.
I know. Well, right, because
What do you think,
how do we
Michaela?
know how
About-
to do the
it's
right
like-
thing? Because I wouldn't imagine that all black people think that it should be the same way even, right? So that's always been my question, right? Like I've tried to listen to black people and I want to like, okay, so what do black people want? And I'm like, okay, well, obviously that's not univocal. So I don't know. Am I talking crazy talk here, Michaela?
No, I don't think so. I've had some big failures in my work on white supremacy and racism, and particularly in league with people of color, in which I didn't recognize my own privilege. I asserted my power too much in a situation where it was not appropriate. I was part of a decision in the local Poor People's Campaign here just 3 years ago to oust an indigenous member of our coordinating committee against his will. We had tried for a long time to learn from him. His main message was indigenous people are sovereign, so we are not going to accept the authority of white people. Well, in our organization, we used a consensus decentralized decision-making model, and he asserted that that's not appropriate for Native American people, particularly if they're working with white people, that we need to listen to him. And because of the extent of his own trauma, which unfolded over time, our awareness of it unfolded over time, he asserted that view time and time again in ways where some white people in our group felt harmed, triggered, re-traumatized in their own experience. And we tried to find a indigenous person to mediate that dispute between him and the rest of us. And he would not accept the role of a mediator. He said, you just need to listen to what I'm saying. I am a sovereign member of an indigenous community. You need to listen to me. You need to do what I think we should do. And I, because I was the person who was closest to having built some level of trust with him, I stepped into trying to spend time with him, talk with him, and find a way for us to come together. And we had a lengthy conversation at one point where it felt like this is possible, this is doable. I asked him if there was room in his world, in his political world and spiritual world. He was a deeply spiritual person, for recognizing that other kinds of people that he was working with politically had also been marginalized. I refer to me in particular as a transgender woman And he said yes. But he still insisted on us following his leadership. And the white people in the group ended up taking a vote on whether or not to ask him to leave. Not really ask him, tell him to leave. And the vote was, yes, we need to tell him to leave because he's causing too much harm in the group. It's not functional. And so I and another white person in the group took on the task of telling him that he's no longer in the group. And of course that, for him, that triggered his more accusations of us being white supremacist. And I haven't figured out that yet. That was 3 years ago. It felt wrong to me, even though I allowed myself to be an instrument of that decision. And I don't know what else we could have done, because it was rendering the group dysfunctional. But there's something that we missed there in trying to listen to his truth. The thing that I've come to so far in analyzing it over and over and over again is that his trauma was so great that he couldn't allow himself to submit to somebody else's leadership because it had been used against him so many times before. Since then, and because of some other mistakes, failures I had in that same general time period with people of color, I've concluded that what we as white people can do about white supremacy and racism is learn from each other, teach each other as white people. Keep listening to what we're hearing at a distance from BIPOC. But my attempts to try to work with them, even just offer my support, have not been accepted well since then. And I think that's as much their decision, maybe more their decision than has been mine. They understand that they have to gather their strength and assert their culture, which they have been doing since the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, and beginning before then, the more and more of indigenous voices coming out and speaking to the story that they have been living for millennia that contradicts the story that we've been taught in white capitalist society.
Yeah. Thank you, Michaela. That was really... It's actually something I've wondered about a lot, too. Because that, not necessarily that one personal conflict, but I just the notion of, well, it's not like Black people are a monolith or indigenous people are a monolith. And so to decide we're doing the right thing as white people, how can we know? I mean, there isn't a right thing. I mean, that's true of everything. There isn't one right way. And we get so stuck thinking with our American exceptionalism indoctrination, we get so stuck thinking that we're looking for one perfect thing or one goal. But in fact, I don't know that there is a moment that as humans will ever be like, here it is, folks, we did it. You know, it will always be this struggle. And I want to honor your efforts in that realm.
Yep.
Because it's important to recognize that I see in you that you have a heart that is totally open, honest, vulnerable, and willing to work hard for change. And you tried really hard to listen to the voices that we ought to be listening to and go arm in arm with your fellow human And so I want to honor your efforts. And I appreciate the wisdom that you're reflecting back to us so that we can learn and do more of what we're doing, which is white people talking to white people, huh? I guess that's it. Because you're right. That woman.
Do we have to talk to other white people? Can't we just talk to each other? We're all white. The things that stand out for me, I think you're absolutely right to honor what Michaela has done. I think that's harder internally to do, where it's felt as failure, as opposed to an acknowledgement of how much you've done. Now, my experience is you're always going to fuck up. I mean, at some point, as a white person, you're going to fuck up. And that's the cost of white supremacy. And because then you are, I don't want to say target, but let's just see the pain. And I think your analysis of unhealed trauma. So here's an entire group of people who have so much unhealed trauma that it's like the mind boggles at it. So there are exceptions to every rule. I have connections to 2 African American men that transcend all of that stuff, because there's an acknowledgement on my part of what I can understand and what I can't. I haven't been a crack addict. I haven't spent 13 years in Folsom for manslaughter. I haven't been, it's like, yet.
You probably have never been stopped
No.
for no reason.
But I feared it growing up. I don't know why. I don't know why. I think for white people in general, until there's some ability, which I sometimes despair of, to acknowledge that trauma, I think in the Bible is something like the parents, you drink sour wine and the 7th generation is still feeling the effects of. You know, it's like, I think that my own understanding is that those historical, the lynchings, tar and fat, all this stuff, doesn't actually go away. It's absorbed, and then it becomes nonspecific. Now it becomes just the pain of that, and it accumulates over generations. Mm-hmm. So that the Black Lives Matter movement, as beautiful as it was, the white people in it who I honor, my family was, it doesn't get you a get out of jail free card. It's like people want to say, well, we apologize, can't we just move on? No! They're 400 years. Every generation being shaped and misshaped by that experience. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it was 2 generations ago or 10 generations or whatever. It's like, so I am so aware. My friend Terry once wrote down, and he's just dyslexic, so that's a real issue for him, what he encountered in one day, the number of issues that he had to deal with, power relationships, comments, whatever. It was 3 pages long, and that was just one day. So we're never going to understand. We're never going to understand. We are never going to understand. But my experience is, if you know that, that's part of cultural humility. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have moved with love and joy through communities of color that I think I've been accepted into, to the extent that a white person can be in that community, because of my understanding of what I don't know. I am humble about that. I could say, well, I have more experience with this shit than you do. I could say that. You could say that too. I don't mean anything. We're all beginners in a sense, no matter how deeply we have explored ourselves and moved into this understanding this dynamic of, how wounds accumulate and fester and so on. So we're always beginners. So it's like a quick story. this is obscure, doing security for a summer camp experience for at-risk youth. And the second year, to punish me, or I don't know why, they decided I would be the security person.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was to make sure everybody was safe, right? That's probably, being the cop is probably doesn't come naturally to me. So I'm, working through this and trying to keep people out of trouble and and this one kid is in my face every hour of every day. Oh, it was like at the end of that, I'm so glad I never have to look at you again. And we've had the bonfire, we've had the coming together at the end, and it's, hey, security guy, come here. Okay, what do you want? I want a hug. What do you mean you want a hug? I want to thank you for doing what every man in his experience should do, which is to keep us all safe. He had played his role. I had played my role. I was the white authority figure. He was the BIPOC person in resistance. And yet, at the end, did I learn something from that? You bet I did. Stop making assumptions, you ignorant piece of shit, and just be there. It's just like... So there are moments where I feel like something happens that shifts you. I don't think we're unenlightened or whatever the word is. I'm just saying we're still novices, we're still beginners, we're still outsiders, loving outsiders who are willing to take an occasional shot that may or may not technically be deserved, actually is because of history, and not let it faze us, and not let it push us away. To dive into that cauldron and try to use my loving nature and what I do know, and I can't do it. I can't physically do it. Mm-hmm. I think that's my deepest regret.
What, that you can't?
That I can't engage in this very tumultuous world where I can't stand up for very long. I tend to fall over when I walk, unless someone who loves me holds my arm. And so I will find ways to slide back into this over time, but I can't make it happen.
Well, this is a way, podcast.
Thank you. I was going to say, Jerry, once again, I will point out the microphone in front of your face and the fact that this is being recorded because you have a voice. I believe last episode you reminded me that I have one, but friend, you have one and you are using it to further the work that you care about as I see it.
I'm going to cry.
Okay, do. Can I put in a metaphor here?
Yes. Yes, Patty.
And you can continue crying if you
You're
wish.
an empowered woman. You can do it.
So as you were talking, the metaphor that kind of popped up, I guess it's kind of off of what you said too, Michaela. I had this metaphor in my head of the time I got noise-canceling headphones.
You got what?
Noise-canceling headphones.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? So the way it works, as I understand it, is you've got a frequency coming in from the outside world, and your headphones are detecting that frequency and creating exactly the opposite frequency so that to your ear, it zeroes it out.
Huh.
And that's what we as white people could maybe say we need to be in the world, is the noise canceling. So if there's all this noise of the residual frequency of systemic racism, of person-to-person racism, if we're the opposite of that, the more of us that are the opposite of that, we're going to be canceling out more and more of that frequency with the one that we're choosing to emit.
I think in some ways, so what's my spiritual practice right now? Living with an open heart and being completely, utterly present, radical presence, showing up. There's a quality in that allows you to absorb a lot of distress because you're completely present and you're just taking it into your body. And again, in a sense, that's a metaphor. But I like the idea that we are capable of absorbing, so that we're to cancel some of that noise in our bodies. I mean, when I talk about being present, I mean present. I mean mindful. It's sort of like, and it's like, in some ways, it's really easy to do. I mean, when you are in that zone, it's not hard. Doesn't mean it'll work out. Doesn't mean there's no outcome. But it's just, I do feel that I can absorb a lot of pain into my body, and that creates a space for things to happen or not happen.
Well, and the more we understand about what Indigenous, BIPOC, other oppressed groups or marginalized groups have experienced, the better we can tune ourselves to be the noise canceling, right? And so to me, that works, that metaphor is working in my head right now in the sense of, you know, Michaela, you went through a painful experience and came to recognize that a joint effort in some cases maybe isn't the way right now, but that you've learned so much and that you now have something to share with other white people.
True.
And we can't do that alone. And that's something that came to me as you were speaking a minute ago, Jerry, that you may be particularly good at receiving the pain of others, but you can't do that alone. And therein lies the need
Right, absolutely.
for not only support from other people, but to organize ourselves. Maybe that's the basis of a new kind of organizing model where we are learning how to support each other in receiving the pain of the most marginalized people. And then with each other, white folks, for example, taking the time and the care to process that together so that, Jerry, you don't go home every night just holding that by yourself.
Yes.
Because you can't sustain that.
No.
You can't survive that.
Trust me, I know
Nobody
that.
can.
I do get overwhelmed sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're onto something. I think we really are circling an important idea of how we can sustain ourselves with joy and purpose on a burning planet. And we can't do it just by knowing what's going on and acting for the actions that are necessary to protect us. We have to do that. But it's what do they say, necessary but not sufficient. Because I think if you look at the civil rights movement or the farm workers here in Oregon, they had a cultural basis for their resistance. They had a common practice. They shared a relatively common culture.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that sense of being an oppressed group. How are you know? So they, I believe, have the capacity to act as a community based on that. And certainly in the civil rights movement, the way in which Black people stood together to resist that had a communal aspect that's lacking among white people in general.
Mm-hmm.
But also if you're trying to build a movement with people from over here and people from over there.
Yeah.
You know, in Woodburn, the farm workers, they have a geographical base, cultural base, political base, and great leadership.
Mm.
And they've done amazing things for a very long time. And a lot of what they do is service. They provide a service as well as organizing. So it's communal. So that's another way: communal, transactional, communal, transformational, and either of these can be transformational, but it is communal. So it's hard. I think the organization of the working class was possible because there were working class communities. They were probably ethnic and they were probably separate, but they were all dealing with the issues of labor in the 30s and 40s. And out of that ability to be collective in a deeper way, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we recreate that? I have no idea.
I have a thought.
Oh, good.
And we'll leave it there for now. Thank you for joining us. Come back for the next episode where we get into the world of technology and debate its usefulness versus its destructiveness in our quest for a changed world. I'm Patty Robron, and my co-hosts have been Michaela McCormick and Jerry Atkin. Until next time, keep speaking truth to goodness, because goodness is all around.